Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Tartarian Tales number 91 via artofdino.com and saveearth.us. And so I've got a good one today, which is from an old book, a really old i600s book, and it is incredible. And so it has a Article 3 in this section says, following some other remarkable particularities in this great empire of China and some neighboring kingdoms. And so some of these things, this insight in here is super magical. And so although it's not Tartaria, technically, it is from the time of the Tartarians, and there's a lot of mention of the Tartarians, and I might include another one, part 2 of 92, which will have the following section, which actually tells a little bit about Tartary, but I've told a lot about that one, and I think a lot of it isn't very new. So this book is awesome, and it's by Peter van der Heyden, who must have done some amazing traveling, and he was an incredible artist in the style of Bosch and all those dudes. And so I translated this from its native French or Dutch or whatever it is. And so some of the translation could be a little off, some of it's a little jumbled, as you can see, but the extent of what it comes out in this is pretty sweet. And there's so many different things in this China section that I had never heard about before, never even fathomed. And so again, it leads and points to a world of the past that was so much more magic and had so many different aspects of it that today we cannot even fathom, we can't even comprehend, and we've been so dumbed down and nullified and just dulled to the point where all of this magic just isn't even if it was here, we probably wouldn't even see it because we're so confused in this modern era. So this had a lot of really cool stuff. So keep that in mind as you're listening and take a look. All the pictures, no AI this one. It's just all amazing engravings like this. So take a look at the awesome pictures, and then my art is at the end to complement it all. So here we go. We're going to read this because it's a little bit long, but it is awesome. And towards the end of it, when they start talking about really cool things like the villages of boats and all different kinds of other places that had magical powers and people that had magical powers and things that are indescribable and almost unfathomable. Stay tuned. All right, here we go. The Chinese call their emperor Tiansu, that is to say, son of heaven and master of the earth. Every night, 5 mathematicians in Peking must spy in the Imperial Observatory the course of the firmament. Very nice. It's written by probably Jesuit or just, who kind of written by people that were not from this area and observing it in a particularly unique way. So the Imperial Observatory, the course of the firmament, I love that. The wind, the constitution of the air, and phenomenon, several similar extraordinary things, and to return the next day an exact account to the president of the College of Mathematicians and to his affiliations, so that the latter may record it and send it to the emperor. So that's pretty cool. Peking and Tartar City just did some amazing stuff. The Chinese have certain degrees of honor which are conferred on those who have done well in the arts and sciences. These honors can be compared very conveniently with our doctors, licentiates, bachelors of fine arts, etc. Moreover, we find in the principal cities philosophical schools and colleges of Confucius, which are only open to the students of his sect, to whom his books are explained on certain days. In China, we do not make single money coins, but pieces of silver of various sizes and values, which have almost the shape of a boat. When one doubts the goodness of silver, one cuts a little to make it salty, for the Chinese are deceitful in business, which obliges those who wish or must negotiate with them to always have in hand, before all things, a gold balance. Although the bowels of the earth in China abound in large quantities with metals and semi-metals, and that without doubt there are also in some mountains good mines of gold and silver, the fundamental laws do not allow them to be opened. One is content only with seeking gold in fables and in the mud, torrents which have very pure gold in abundance. Moreover, there is in this country a large quantity of topazes, lodestones, of porcelain, liver, and cotton. This beautiful region and its cities often make tremble, shaken by earthquakes. Tibet was just hit. The arms of the emperors of China make a dragon with 5 feet called Lom. It is said their way of speaking I'm not sure what that part is. Sorry, again, some of this is confusing because of the translation sloppiness. In his treatise of capital punishment of the Jesuits, use them to whoever it may be, but it is as put to individuals to carry a dragon at patters they call ma'am, so much in their clothes they say that they have cherished very this permission from the Emperor Von, who reigned 2,832 years ago and more, whose the names of these emperors all mean the names of the days something singular. For example, emperors Cham He, peace and permanent truce, Zun Qi, Ure, reign, Tai Xin, great cleanliness. The stories in the fabulous chronology of the Chinese chronologists go back to the past 40,000 years, which is the case with the Sinoese. The world has already lasted, according to them, from which it would follow that their empire has been a long time before all other states in the world. Think about that and wonder where those chronologies are. Someone definitely, hopefully, would not have the lack of soul to destroy something like that. But somewhere 40,000 years of history is documented, and these guys documented these stars every day. So who is to tell how long that astrology has been around and what they observed? They may even have recollections and different information and recordings from the skies of the past eons ago, like the Great Long Count the Mayans talk about 30,000+ years ago. They may have all of that documented. Pretty amazing. Again, so much we're not told in this modern life. They believe that the imperial family that rules house now, it is the 21st of those who have occupied the imperial throne of China since the beginning of this monarchy. They also say that only China has ships, so many ships as all the states of Europe put together. Almost every ship is manned by a family. There are floating villages in China, villages which Mr. Neuhoff speaks of in his Voyage of Floating Villages in China. Here is the translation of this passage. A whole little village, he said, was floating on the water. The Chinese call this fort the floating village. They have them built so beautifully and artistically that I doubt very much if the most clever and ingenious European could imitate it with as much grace. Again, that takes a lot of years to get to that state. These houses are founded on a fort of rushes and very large and strong stumps, which the Portuguese call bamboches, but nevertheless so spongy and so light that they cannot go to the bottom, not even in waters of a moderate depth. The one joins these canes together with large pieces of wood tied to each other with cables made of the plant that the Chinese call rotang. It is on these rafts that they erect huts and cabins of wood and other light materials, covered up with mats woven with rushes. The peasants live there with their household and families, living in the same manner as those who live on the mainland. Sometimes these villages are so extensive that 200 whole families can be accommodated there at large. These people traffic mainly in Chinese goods of all sizes, going and coming with their floating village or raft covered with houses from one place to another by the favor of rivers and torrents, without sails and mats, with which the ships of the Chinese are provided for the most part, letting them only go with the current of the water, or leading them with poles and pulling them by ropes when they must go up against the torrent. When they arrive at some place where they want to sell something, they drive stakes into the ground to which they attach their village. In this country we find entire cities that float, which we could call cities of ships. These are fleets composed of 400 to 500 ships tied together, which we call junks. They are joined at all times, and the Chinese live there all their lives with their wives and children. Such a fleet sails throughout the country to carry on its trade. When they leave, it seems that a whole city of ships has gone away. The inhabitants of these fleets feed themselves with animals, as on land, mainly pigs. Wherever they arrive, they usually stop there for a few months, and then they speak the same language, although they are of different nationalities. The famous Wall of China, which the Chinese Van Li Qing, that is to say, a wall of 1,000 stades, surrounds on the northern side nearly a third of this empire, particular 4 provinces, which are Liantan, Pacheli, Zhanxi, and Zhenfi, which makes the length of 300 German miles of Germany, German miles, for it begins at the 152nd degree of longitude near the mouth of the river Yalo, which empties into a gulf, which is between Liatan and the peninsula of Korea, ever having crossed eastern Tartary, and extends to the mountains of the city of Can. So this part I'm going to ignore because we've talked about the wall a lot in a lot of different videos, and this doesn't have anything new that says otherwise, that the Tartarians created it or anything else. So I'm going to skip a couple paragraphs there. You can go back and read it if you would like. In the beginning, I have all these pages translated. So I'm going to say this guy, he goes on a little bit, and this part's pretty cool. All right. Are indebted for this. So they defend this wall. 100,000 men of war the Chinese would formerly maintain to defend this wall against interruptions of the Tartars. We are indebted for this considerable something left to Emperor Zayas, celebrated for so many other beautiful pieces of architecture of which he was the author, and for so many great exploits of reign. So this guy, boom, Zayas. Of course, the names of these architects would be recognized and remembered by a civilization that's normal, like these guys over here back at this time. They honor their architects, whereas all of the ones of the ancient world seem to be lost to us nowadays. This emperor was the first of the race of Sin in the year 22 of his reign, in 215 before the birth of our Savior. From a small king that he was at first, he became a powerful monarch by the supplication of the race of Chen, and by the conquest of all China, as also by the final victory that he gained over the Tartars, as hereditary enemies of the Empire of China. So Tartars and Chinese are just going back and forth. The exact relationship between them is a little cloudy. By Mungtian, his general, who attacked them with an army of 300,000 men and routed them, after which Zayas had this great wall built to protect his states from the eruptions and ravages of the barbarians. Nevertheless, the Tartars have since scaled the wall on various occasions and have often disturbed the peace of this beautiful country. It was begun in various parts of the empire and completed in the space of 15 years by an incredible number of men, since the emperor had raised for this purpose 3 men out of 10 from all his states. Its masonry is so solid and its cement so firm that not a nail can be driven into the joints of the stones. Its beginning is in the Gulf, a few miles from the shore. This part has its foundations, a large number of sunken vessels. They are not filled with stones, but with iron minerals, to have a foundation that much firmer and more solid. I wonder how many coastlines that around China or anywhere in general have these floating villages, and if the reeds and different things inevitably would connect to the ground and form like something that you wouldn't even be able to tell it was formerly a boat island. But very interesting. Again, all this stuff is, I'm picking stuff here that you guys may not have heard of and that I haven't really heard of. So the same King Zayas, Xius, author of the above-mentioned wall, had erected on 2 rocks in the sea the statue of the river Kiang of cast and cast iron. It was 80 ells high, so that through its spread legs the vessels could pass, as easily as for the Colossus of the island of Rhodes, which was ells lower than the other. And for added wonder, the Colossus of Zayas pours from a gold he had torrent of fresh water into the water of that of the sea which is under its feet. The first is esteemed so delicious that one receives every day as much as the Emperor of China must have for his tea, to take it to his court. So wow, you always hear about the Colossus of Rhodes, but never the Colossus of Zayas, which was higher than it, and from a mouth of gold pours a torrent of fresh water into the sea. Like, what? These people had to be so advanced to pull this kind of stuff off. We can barely even make anything nowadays compared to this. These people were superior, and they lived in a world where the knowledge and wisdom allowed by them and their controllers was far superior and far more comprehensive than what we are allowed to today. So he would make that tea and take it to his court, because all in China there is, it is said, no water more suitable for this. It is claimed that this fresh water is conducted from a copious source which is on the mountain of Hoi by stone pipes to this statue of a giant, which is believed to be higher than the wall, with incredible difficulty and expense. Wow. There is a proverb which says about the city of Suchia that it is on earth what the sky is in the air. The enclosure of its walls is 33.5 miles of Germany, and that of its suburbs is 7. Its wealth and great navigation are inexpressible. So what is that place, and what kind of wall was that? Was that a star fort or what? 33.5 miles of wall. Wow. So here we go. Get ready for some interesting stuff here. The Kiang, or the Blue River, is a reservoir between high mountains, which are called the Gates of Heaven, through which one passes by boat. Imagine how beautiful that would be. The city of Peking is nicknamed a shark, an anthill, because of the great antiquity of its world, the wonder of the world because of its superb buildings, a garden because of the purity of its air, the great number of its pleasure gardens, lakes, and ponds, the compendium of the earth because of its riches, the academy of philosophers because of the politeness, humanity, and knowledge which dominate there, item, the metropolis of the world, and the queen of cities. In the middle of the city, there is a tower, high and admirable for its structure and materials. This city being all of green, red, and yellow porcelain on the outside, and so artistically composed that it seems to be all of one piece. 9 galleries covered with green reign around it, at equal distances from each other, a large number of angles of which are adorned with silver bells, which, being agitated by the wind, make a very agreeable sound. Amazing. A large pomegranate of pure gold crowns its point. It is said that this admirable marble is also the work of Zayas, this great monarch of China. Whoever appears in a blue habit, which is the mourning color of the Chinese, at the palace of Qinhua in Peking is guilty of death. So do not go there in blue. But wow, imagine that too, and how it says covered with red and all these different colors around it, so artistically composed that it seems to be all of one piece. These cities were works of art that were almost, probably from above, looked like one of my artworks. Incredibly detailed, incredibly colorful, and beautiful. And I think all of these ancient buildings were covered in either precious jewels, paint from precious metals, or various other things that would make them so much colors. I think, in contrast to what we see today, the dead, bone-like, skeleton-like structures of all these old world buildings, I think every single one of them was of beautifully painted color and of an artistic expression unlike anything we've ever seen. And I think that's an important part of getting rid of that, because colors have symbols and they have meaning attached to them. And they probably had artwork attached to all of them. So if you erase the artwork, you erase the story, you erase the soul of the architecture, kind of. And then you just have the structure. So keep that in mind, because I guarantee you the old world had so much color. There's no doubt in my mind. So let's see. The fam bird of the, the fam, F-A-M, bird of the sign is here confided. Fam as the king of all the birds of this country, because its head partly resembles that of the pan, partly that of the dragon. Its tail is similar to that of a chicken, a cock, its plumage mixed with the 5 most beautiful colors. This bird is to them, I'm not sure if this is the peacock or something else, but this bird is to them the symbol of the 5 principal virtues, and when it hides, it is to the Chinese a sign of some misfortune which is to happen. Rians, king of China, in the person of Rian Strait, who ended the royal race of Hiaa, had dug for his subjects proof of his power, a large pond capable of carrying large vessels, and having had it filled with wine, he wanted everyone to drink in it, like dogs, 3,000 men at a time, in turn, and that they should flee to the nearest wood to smoke the roasted oxen, deer, and fangs, which he had tied to the trees. When the Chinese brought to the comparable drink King Yu's a delicious and new drink, newly composed of rice and other excellent ingredients, maybe sake, he cried out, "Woe to my family and to the kingdom, because they will both perish by this sweet poison." The kings of the Indies always carry water from the Ganges, each cup of which is an ounce lighter than the other waters of the world. Interesting. The Chinese of quality do not easily drink water from a fountain, unless they have weighed it on an artificial scale. We also find in the countries of Zenji and Kiyomo rivers which carry neither wood nor straw, much less any boat, because of the lightness of their waters. The Chinese also that's nuts. Think about that. The heaviness of water is so noticeable that you can tell. Whereas nowadays, the water we are being given is just pure plastic, filth, garbage, disgusting. It's like poison. These people back then would have probably looked at it and spat it out immediately. We have destroyed the beauty of water. And when you hear this and how people could tell the different weights of it, it's a totally different substance in the past. We have lost it, which is just really sad. Really, really sad. So here we go. We also find in the countries of Zenzi and Kiyomo rivers which carry, Witterstrap. The Chinese also report a very glorious point of the life of Tanyus in their king, the author of the race of Zanga. It is strong that after a drought of 7 years, this father of his people, on the advice of the divinators, who said that the angry heaven should be appeased by the 10 prayers by the death of a man, had offered himself to a public service, but that by his devotion obtained a very fertile reign. They also said by the prayers of King Chaos, the planet of Mars had retrograded to 3 of the celestial degrees. Xune, another king of China, had published throughout his kingdom a prohibition to take to his court not to obey his orders as much as one found them just and suitable to the laws. He also wanted his guards to use the points of their swords in his defense, as long as he behaved like a true father of the country, but that they should turn them against him if he did harm to any of his subjects. Imagine how quickly we would turn on American and UK and other worldly politicians now if they offered us something like that. They wouldn't last a week. They say that the same king had introduced banishment as a punishment, which far surpassed the last punishment. It is said that during the reign of the wise King Yus, it rained gold for 3 days. The northern Tartars of the kingdom of Nyulba and Yen wear copper cuirasses on their chest, which are proof against arrows and sabers on their heads. They swear by the saber and by the owl, which they esteem as wise and as holy as that of the Athenians, because they had consecrated this bird to the goddess Pallas. The gensible grass, as the Indians call it, has the property that its leaves refer to the approach of the hand. It is also said that it is capable of inspiring love and restoring lost modesty. An Indian philosopher was so attached to the research of the secret virtues of this grass that he lost his mind. There is in China another marvelous plant in that it drops its leaves as soon as one touches them. In the island of Ceylon, otherwise Taprobana, there grows a tree whose leaves, when fallen to the ground, fly away 2 feet when touched. Those of the plant which is called Charitoblepharon stiffen and become hardened by touching. Even the plants were more alive than they are now. And I've seen some plants that will, if you touch them, they kind of retract a little bit. But this is a whole nother story. These are like plants that are alive. And they also mention the lamb of Tartary, which again, another plant that has like weird life, makes sounds. You know, I wonder if you go back, if plants at one point were even conscious. Who knows, for God's sakes? There's so much mystery in this world, and we are in the depleted time of it. So everything we think has got to be imagined about the past because we've just lost it all. It's nuts. But here we go. Near the city of Qinggun in the province of Sichuan, there are trees which bear the flower called Tingoa. Each of these flowers engenders a small perfect bird, which is called Tung Brafung. So I don't know if this is the bird of paradise, maybe not, but maybe, which has a red beak and feathers of various colors. But this beautiful little beast dies with its mother, the flower. One of the ancient kings of China had the monkey of mountain or the rock of Tanguin in the territory of Chongqing, so much so that it represents the idol of the Apis, the legs crossed and the arms lying at the breast. All its members, even the smallest, are so big and tall that in clear weather one can distinguish them from men more than 2 miles from Germany beyond. I love the German miles, that's interesting. In which all this figure surpasses that of the Sphinx of Egypt, which according to the fable was a monster which saw the head and face of a young girl, but of an enormous size, since it was only 122 feet thick, 143 long, and 162 high. Its bird wings and the rest of the body, similar to a dog, were proportionate to the head, and the whole was carved from a single rock, and the pedestal of the pyramid or monument of King Amasis, composed of 2 large stones, each 30 feet thick and 1,400 long, containing the cells of the priests, which were carved there, all in one piece. Nuts. God, and and that's the thing too. I think they kept Egypt intact the way they did, like things like the Sphinx and the pyramid, so that people would associate that with Egypt and almost Egypt alone, and then they wouldn't even think about China having pyramids or having any of these things, because China seemed to have all of these things, like the roads and all these different statues and different things and creations that we were never taught existed here. Especially after the Cultural Revolution, I can't even imagine how much of this knowledge was destroyed. These two idols, I say, famous in pagan antiquity, do nothing at the price of the fee, whatever that is. On the mountain of Lungmuen, near the city of Chongqing, is seen a very rich and superb temple of idols, the exterior being of white marble, and the interior covered with gold plates. It is here that the ancient kings of China were crowned, and that the priest Sinti, protected from the rage of Tian, that tyrant of the country who, to erase the memory of all his ancestors, burned all the writings in all said men. More than 30,000 books, which by means are preserved until now. Wow. So whoever that guy was, he was terrible, and God knows where he came from. Again, he may have came from somewhere else, but 30,000 books, massive history. Again, that's a huge blow to humanity and our species. The arms of the king's reign are a dragon, described in the footnote of this chapter. All those who are admitted to the audience or presence of the king must render him profound respects, as also the king himself, the day of his election. Mount Juntal in China is called the fiefdom of clouds because of its prodigious height. On the mountain of Poching there is found the herb called hoako, which makes sterile. On that of Loyo, a lion of enormous size, carved in the rock, throws a torrent of living water from its mouth. And it's funny because someone just mentioned one of my comments mentioned an old zoo in the middle of the country that had an old water fountain in the zoo, or in the shape of a lion that you'd eat from the lion's mouth. So again, all these things, nothing new under the sun. The wonderful mountain of Ionio bears the name of a majestic woman because nature has formed there a marble woman so beautiful that Praxiteles could never have made of it. Wow. And so again, was that an old thing? Was that an ancient creation, or was it something else? Who knows? Was it naturally made? I don't think so. I bet you it's another relic from God knows what civilization before. And there, were these guys back in the day when they were starting their civilization, was it a pure kind of realm, or were they finding things from the relics of their distant ancestors? There is no telling. We just know that evolution is a total scam, and there's more things beyond the poles where probably a lot of these things came from. And maybe that's when they discovered this part of the realm, the true people of Earth. Maybe they discovered it 40,000 years ago, and that's when they started, and they started in China and then wherever. Who knows? Keep going. In the Fuxian, near the city of Yechu, is the marble where nature has traced, like a skilled painter with his brush, mountains, rivers, trees, and flowers. And at the foot of Mount Xian, in the country of Hukuang, one finds a quantity of petrified swallows. One sees in the kingdom of Qianzi or Qiangfi 2 unequal rocks, the highest of which represents a dragon and the lowest a tiger, in such an attitude that they seem to run towards each other. The mountain of Qi in Qiangfi has the figure of an elephant, and that of a paki, and Zenchi of a cock, which makes a great noise every time a storm is about to break out in this country. The hill of Meinen near Sunshin shows 2 large eyes where nature has perfectly distinguished the pupil, as well as the white and the black. It is said that the rump of the mountain of Lo represents 27 grown men. In the treasury of the Emperor of Pearls of China are shown 2 large pearls, which King Hyavos found in a fisherman's net on the shore of the island of Haitan. They are called the pearls of the clear moon, because they change color with the crescent in the waning of the sun, in imitation of the stone of the moon. It is added that a fish that the king had taken from the ground made him find these pearls, as in gratitude for the liberty that he had given them. Nuts. Amazing. And again, I beg to propose the theory that animals played a much more amazing role in the past than we are told. Again, we know they were used for war and for traveling and for building and construction, but I think they were conscious, able to be communicated with in some particular ways, at least more so than today, because you can communicate with them today once you train them. I think all of those trained animals are hints at what these animals' intelligence levels were in the past. And since they honored them with massive sculptures and so many different things, they worshipped them, they revered them, then there's no telling what their power was and how connected they were to our rise as a species. I think we all joined forces together, and at one point back in the day, this garden was all perfect. Everyone equal and enjoying the miracles of the universe. So here we go. The said moonstone, which is found in the rare kingdom of Sensi, waxes and wanes according to the stones, the various lunations. There are in this country various other stones which also regulate the course of this earth, like the sea, and there is found on the mountain of Zhangchu, located in Qiang, another stone similar to a statue, which changing color with the air announces the change of the weather. It is said that the Indians worship emerald like their ancestors, the tooth of a large emerald of the size of an ostrich egg. The mountain of Zeku in the Hindustan is called the stone drum because of the sound and noise that is heard there. All the Chinese claim to be buried in the tomb of their ancestors, even if only one of their teeth, if the whole body cannot enter there. On the mountain of Qing Cave, full of idols, there is a cave that is called the Temple of Concord, because the 10,000 small idols of the Chinese are assembled there. They are fortified, according to them, by a single large idol, which is withdrawn into this madness. In the province of Kwangtung, there is a common herb by the nodes of which one can predict how many storms are to come the following year and in what month. Nuts. On the shore of the Lu in China, there is a rock called Espit Tonant, which has the shape of a dragon with a man's head. If one strikes its belly, it makes a sound similar to the crash of thunder, and for this reason the Chinese call it the thundering spirit. So what are these? Are these like different creations by different wizards, sorcerers, magicians, archaeologists, farmers, different things like that, or like geologists, things that people, like, what are these things that discovered? Are these relics from an ancient past where, again, everything was embedded with life? And again, on that note, maybe everything had this power. Like herbs all have a power when they're smoked or brewed in a tea or made into a resin. They all have increased powers. What if all of these things at one point did? The rocks, the plants, if they had another whole living essence to them that they've lost since, or the atmosphere has changed so they don't get it. They don't get the power they used to. The water's changed, so they're not growing as healthy and as strong and smart as they did. So many differences between this pure world of the past and our polluted mess of a trash dump now. So here we go. The Guangxi terroir produces a wonderful plant which throws a white powder very suitable for kneading roots. He believes in huquang, a herb which is called pufu, which lasts 1,000 years and has the virtue, it is said, of making the oldest rejuvenate. Where is that one? In the region of Liaotung or Liaotum comes the root of ginseng, the only one that still we've heard of today, really. Similar to our mandrake, it gives the half-dead a fendis. I don't know what that is. Doesn't really say much. The grass of yew in the province of Fujian can be treated and titled like liver. I'm not sure what they mean by liver because they mention it in a few different kind of ways, but although this fabric is considered more precious. Another herb called kui chases away melancholy. It is said that the summit of, I wonder if that's soma or reefer. It is said that the summit of Chihoa or Qinghua summit, a mountain very rich in fine gold, is all of this metal. So boom, how many other mountains are just metal? And imagine if they were different metals and veins, all these different things that we see, and then just dirt and other nonsense piles on top. There could be many mountains of metal. Who knows? In the capital of Chequian alone, there are more than 60,000 workers in the liver, who together with the other inhabitants of this city consume every day 10,000 pounds of rice, each of which feeds 100 people, which makes its greatness understandable. The famous philosopher Nyan Sulin made his residence in a secret great way on the mountain of Fucheng, near the city of Sintu. In this He only ate fish. He had retired there solely to escape the great burdens of the empire which had been offered to him. The mountain of Kutian, near K. Marveahoa, is remarkable in that the serpents lose their venom, and the furious tigers lose their rage. The first crawl, and the others play around the men who sleep there. So what is that? What is the energy that's doing that? What kind of metal? What kind of radiation? What kind of power is doing that? Or is that just a hint of the way the garden was when animals didn't do that? Maybe we did something to the animals at one point that turned them into this thing, and that's how they evolved after that. collective memory, and they remembered that they needed to defend themselves, and then we scared them perpetually, and now we don't get along. Who knows? A lot of different theories. On that of Yankio, we see a figure of a man which changes with the weather and the color, and which thus predicts the weather that will be there. The inhabitants of the surroundings of Tianzhou notice at night on this mountain a fire which from afar resembles embers, which simple people take for rare serpents or spiders. Near the town of Kuilin, there are 7 mountains which very properly represent the formation of the Star of the Great Bear. How about that? The North Star and Ursa Major represented by 7 mountains. And are those mountains towers of the old? If they know of it that way, that they're still connected to the stars in that sense, maybe they are leftover and maybe they are ruined towers from that past where people were building in connection with the stars and in harmony with them. Who knows? In the vicinity of the town of Kuiping, there is a horned beast whose bones exceed the yu. This beast lets itself be caught most easily with spread salt. It is said that on the mountain of Fengyan or Fuhang, thousands of birds gather every year to mourn their dear phoenix who died there. This stuff is just fantastical. The rock Tianu bears the name of Ear of Heaven because of its echo, which is very subtle. The surroundings in the air of the city of Munger are almost perfumed by all the balm that is found there. The river of Lukiang is called the Mother of Waters because of its width. It is only on the banks of this river that the white elephants are found, although very rarely. The Indians take them for kings of the others. See what we have reported of them in the preceding chapter. The Indians render a divine cult to the river Ganges, and they pay it greater veneration and respect than the Egyptians do to the Nile, in the infusion than at the recurrence of seawater, which the Indians take for a fine urine, and the Egyptians for purulent tears of Saturn. Also, these people do not use sea salt, but that which is drawn from the salines of Jupiter, Hammon. The water of the Ganges is the strongest, so much so that if an abstainer only thinks of it, this memory alone is enough to cleanse him of his sins. And imagine if that is real, if that is the power of water. Just imagine what they have robbed us of. And think about you out there in California who can barely even get a drop. Think about this. This is all done on purpose. They know exactly what to target, and they do it so well and so comprehensively. It's sick. Now, it talks about the Ganges and says some stuff that's not too interesting. And the Ganges is in India, so I'm not really totally sure why it's exactly in this chapter, but there's a final couple paragraphs here that I want to read before. I'm just going to skip a few of those paragraphs on the Brahmins and stuff like that. Maybe they were both connected. Maybe they were part of China at one point. I don't really know. But this part, the last part of this section says, the kings of Hindustan formerly reserved for themselves all the diamonds that weighed 100 carats. The kings of Scythia all the large turquoises, and those of Egypt all the topazes. They kept them in their treasure. In the China Sea there is found a rare strong tor of turtles, which are covered with scales, skilled of which the Chinese doctors make a universal remedy for all sorts of diseases. And with regard to the flesh of these beasts, they give it to the sick to eat. The Japanese call them tamuk, that is to say burrowers, because they make deep burrows on the seashore to live there sheltered from all pursuits and invasions. In the river of Chowking's cows, or Chowking, we find a species of amphibious sea cow, I wonder if it's a manatee, which sometimes come to fight with domestic cows, I'm not sure how that works, but which are soon obliged to withdraw because the air softens their horns. Interesting. Walruses, maybe. Lastly, it says near Cheochen, there is a beast that lives on the seashore, amphibious. It has the head of a bird, the tail of a fish, and some precious stones in its belly. Besides, we find here sea crayfish, which have the shape of other ordinary crayfish, but with this particularity that they harden first when they come into the air, without losing anything of their shape. The powder of these crushed crayfish is an excellent remedy against fever. So, wow, that's just a bombarding paragraph or chapter of all these different things relating to this time period and ancient China and all these things. But this is only a small bit, because imagine if you were to go to all the different places and you were to really travel to all these places. And this guy did. He traveled pretty far. He went to some the sites that you see in those pictures are amazing. The engravings, all the tech in each one of the pagodas that are just ridiculously elaborate, and the ceramic and all the different things that were in there, the sciences, the stars. stars. They paid so much attention to them. They had the observatory. They had all of these things. They had plants that reacted to people. They had water that had different levels of sacredness and power and magic and healing properties. They had herbs that did so many different things, animals that interacted with them, animals that did stuff for them. So many different magical places that had just huge towers, huge things that looked like giant animals, huge remnants of other ancient past. There's just no telling, because this place is so packed with amazing things, and the stories of the past are just so different than we have of the stories now. If these things occur now, they are small and they are insignificant and minor. Back in the day, when everyone, the collective consciousness, was thinking these things and embracing these things, it created a whole different atmosphere of a world. It created a whole different reality. And again, wow, so amazing to think about all this stuff. And even the fireworks, they had fireworks shows back then. And how long did those evolve? The chariots, the juggernauts that they had, the villages of the sea, where did those end up? How many people lived on those? What did that look like to see 500 boats joined together? And it's definitely different than our modern cruise ship, but they were all naturally built. And where did they get that idea from? Was there other people that did that? Is that the people came down from the poles may have discovered that? Maybe that's the only way they could get down to make that voyage across that distant sea, was to make a colony and that floated. And just, you never know. So many different theories, so many different possibilities of this ancient world. And I just wanted to share this with you because this was quite a collection. So I hope you all enjoyed this. Chime in below, and bless you all from artofdino.com and saveearth.us.